Over at the International Criminal Court in The Hague, a truly historic legal battle is getting underway. We're talking about former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte, and he's at the center of a case that could totally redefine what accountability looks like for world leaders. So let's get right into this. Right from the get-go, the prosecution's language was incredibly sharp. They weren't just hinting at a policy failure, no. They put Duterte right in the center of a massive campaign of violence. That phrase, at the very heart, that is the entire foundation of their case. To make sense of what's really at stake here, we're going to break it down into 5 key parts. We'll look at why this is such a big deal, what the lawyers are actually arguing, the 2 totally different stories being told, what happens next, and then the huge ripple effect this case is already having. So first, let's just zoom out for a second and appreciate how massive this is. You have a former head of state facing an international court for alleged crimes against humanity, all stemming from his signature war on drugs. And this is what makes it completely unprecedented. I mean, sure, other world leaders have faced the ICC before, but this is the very first time a former president from Asia has been brought before the court on these specific, very grave charges. It's a true landmark moment for international justice. Now let's drill down into how the prosecution is actually building its case. Because this isn't just about what happened on the streets, it's about who they believe is ultimately responsible. Everything, and I mean everything, hinges on this one legal idea: command responsibility. So what does that mean? Well, it means a leader doesn't have to have personally pulled the trigger. All the prosecution needs to do is prove that he enabled, encouraged, or created the system that led to the crimes. And here's how they're trying to connect those dots. They claim Duterte basically engineered a killing machine. They argue he took a notorious model he allegedly used as mayor of Davao City, this pattern of vigilante-style killings, and just scaled it up for the whole country. And in their view, all those fiery public speeches, well, that wasn't just political talk. They argue it was a direct incitement to kill. But then you get to this number, 78. Amidst the thousands upon thousands of alleged killings, the official charges from the ICC are tied to just 78 specific victims. And that raises a pretty obvious question, right? When you hear activists estimating the death toll could be as high as 30,000, why focus on such a tiny fraction of that? Well, this is a crucial point. It's a standard legal tactic at the ICC. The goal isn't to prosecute every single death. That would be literally impossible. Instead, they use a small, really well-documented group of cases as a representative sample to prove a pattern of widespread and systematic violence. It's about proving the existence of the killing machine itself. So, this brings us to the core conflict you'd see in the hearing room. 2 completely opposite stories trying to explain the same events. It's a total clash of narratives. On one side, you have the prosecution arguing that this was an organized, state-sponsored policy and that the speeches were a green light to kill. But on the other side, Duterte's defense says, no, the killings were tragic, but they were the work of rogue police, not state policy. They say his fiery rhetoric was just political hyperbole, tough talk meant to scare criminals, not a direct order. And of course, they claim the entire case is politically motivated. Okay, so with these 2 clashing stories on the table, what is the court actually trying to decide right now? What are the immediate next steps? And this is a really, really important thing to understand. This hearing is not the trial. There's no guilty or not guilty verdict coming out of this. It's better to think of it as a legal gateway. The judges are simply looking at the evidence and deciding if there's enough there to even move forward with a full trial. The path from here is pretty clear-cut. Once the hearing is over, the judges will deliberate. They've got about 60 days to decide if there are, and this is the legal term, substantial grounds to believe the charges are credible. If they say yes, the charges get confirmed, and the case moves on to what would be a truly historic full trial. But the consequences of this case go way, way beyond the courtroom walls. It is already sending massive shockwaves through the Philippines and across the entire international community. Back home in the Philippines, the political fallout is immense. This case is completely reshaping the conversation around the next presidential election in 2028. It's forcing politicians aligned with Duterte to take a stand, and it's sparking these fierce debates about national sovereignty versus international law. It's threatening to deepen the political divides all across the country. This really shows just how high the stakes are for everyone. For the victims' families, this is a potential landmark moment for accountability they never thought they'd see. For Duterte's political allies, it's a real test of loyalty and political survival. For the current Marcos administration, it is a super delicate diplomatic balancing act. And for the rest of the world, this sets a powerful precedent for whether the ICC can actually hold powerful leaders accountable. Ultimately, it all boils down to this one monumental question. No matter what happens in this initial hearing, the final verdict, whether it's a conviction or an acquittal, is going to have a profound meaning, not just for an entire nation, but for the very idea of global justice itself. And so we are left with the fundamental debate at the heart of this entire thing. Is this an essential act of international justice for victims who had nowhere else to turn, or is it an unwelcome geopolitical intervention into the internal affairs of a sovereign nation? That is the question that now hangs over The Hague.